The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
The famed Chaim Kreiswit, eventually the Rav in Antwerp, was a very well-known Ilui Goin, big Bal Chesed, married off countless Yisayimim and Yisayimis. He put money together, traveled the world, raised funds to marry off the Yisayim and Yisayimis. He was once the featured speaker in Eretz Yisrael at a dinner, a fundraising dinner for the famed organization Ezer Metzion. And obviously, he was trying to ingrain in the participants the chshivas of helping another yid, another chesed to another yid. So he shared a personal story of himself in his drasha, and he said as follows. He says, when he was still a bacha, a teenage bacha, he was learning the yeshiva in Varsha, in Warsaw, Poland, the capital of Poland, Varsha. And as he was this big Ili that he was, in his tender age, he was already saying a shir, some kind of a shir, to the bachrim of the yeshiva, his peers. He wasn't the only one, but they gave him already at his young age to say some kind of a shir at some point in the day. And this yeshiva, obviously, like all yeshivas in Europe, was the ruchnius was there, but the gashmius is very limited. Food, lodging, and not every bacha, he said in the yeshiva, had a bed to sleep on at night. There were some that the yeshiva couldn't supply them the beds, the space for the beds, and these few bachram ended up sleeping every night, literally on the floor. Allah Tztishan. Chaim Kreiswit said, even though he was relatively junior to some other boys in the yeshiva, but since he was given the privilege to say a shir, he got an added privilege that he had a bed. And he slept on a bed. And at some point, he says, he got a message from one of the rebbes in Poland, and the message was that there's going to be a very choshev yid coming to Varsha to visit a doctor. He needs a doctor, an eye doctor. He had problems, major problems with his eyes. The name of this person, they called him Rab Shayla Mishnah. Rab Shayla Mishnah. The reason his family name was not Mishnah, but due to his eye problems, he learned Torah Shebal Peh. He didn't learn inside, simply due to the problems with his eyesight. And he used to say constantly, Mishnayis Bal Peh. So they nicknamed him Abshayla Mishnah. Mishnah like Mishnah. And this Abshayla Mishnah is coming to town, and they asked him, this Bacha Chaim Kreiswit, to arrange for him a place to lodge, a place to be, an achsanya. And Chaim Kreiswit continued, he said, I tried to find some place, and I couldn't. And this Abshayla Mishnah comes to town, and Chaim Kreiswit goes l'kabel ponov. And the Abshayla asks him, were you able to arrange for me? He said, Laida, I couldn't find for you a place, sadly. But you know what? He says, I have a bed for you in the yeshiva where I learn, and this yeshiva, and this in the street. So at night, please. Chaim Kreiswit gave up his own bed. And he said that the care for the eyes was a lengthy one. It was retracted. So night after night, not days but weeks, this Reb Shai Mishnah slept in Chaim Kreiser's bed, and Chaim Kreiser slept on the floor. Gewaltig, gewaltig. He said years later, Chaim Kreiser continued, he was learning in Yachel, Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, the famous yeshiva in Lublin, Ramesh Shapir's yeshiva. And Ramesh Shapir wasn't alive at the time anymore, but he learned it. And Rachmana litzlan, when the terrible Churban Yahadus in Europe, the Nazis Yamach Shemam entered Lublin, they got a hold of a name list of the Talmidim learning in Chachmei Lublin, in the yeshiva. And they came down and they set up for themselves one of the walls outside the yeshiva, a specific wall they designated, that will be what they call the death wall. That's where they will shoot, Rachmana litzlan, the Bachram of the yeshiva against that wall. And they did it separately, not a mass killing. They decided to do it individual. So there was a commandante, Rachmana litzlan, who called out a name from the list. The Bachar went out, was told to go to that wall, and Nebuch, Al Kiddush Hashem. He was killed. And that's how it went one after the other. And Chaim Kreiswitz said, and then his name was called. And he knew now that he has a very short time span to do whatever he has to do before he goes Al Kiddush Hashem. And one of the things that he said to Rebbeinu Shalom, I don't know if my learning is a schus for me enough. No one knows which schusim a person could use. He says, but if the Torah is not a schus for me now, for whatever reason, because of Averis or whatever, I want to ask if it's possible the chesed that I did to the Shai Mishnah, that I gave up my bed for him, so many days, weeks, whatever it was, if that chesed could be for me something, should be matzil mi mavis. He tried, and he goes out, lines himself up at the wall, at that death wall that the Machshemams coined it, and the one who's shooting says to him, uncharacteristic, obviously, you're too good looking that you should be killed. Pella, aritzeach shein kamoyu. And the Eibishter put a machshav into his head to save Chaim Kreiser. The Rosh Merusha says to him, you're too good looking to be killed. Let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a show. I'm going to play this spiel as if you are being killed, but it's not going to happen. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to shoot you away, but I'm going to aim the gun just a few centimeters off, a little bit. In other words, I'm going to shoot at you, but not really at you. I'm going to shoot just on your side, and I'm going to miss. Precision. And when that happens, run for your life as fast as possible. Run away so fast that before the other people, other Nazis, Yimach Shemam around, will chap what happened here, and you'll be safe. I said Pella. So Chaim Kreiser himself said the story. And it's exactly what happened. He shot, and he made sure to miss just by a few centimeters. And Chaim Kreiser ran for his life, and eventually he was able to get somewhere, and eventually he stayed alive. And we had the Chaim Kreiser all the years thereafter. This is what Chaim Kreiser said. He feels that his bakasha of the chesed that he did to the Shai Mishnah gave up a bed, slept on the floor for so long. The Ma'aseh Chesed gave him the schus that he was saved from literal death, vadai, death. Miyodam, the gun was pointed at him. Matzileinu miyodam, the Rebbeinu Shalom saves us even when we are already in the grass. Afilu cherev chada monachas al tzavar shalodam al yisyahish. Person shouldn't give up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu matzileinu miyodam. A journey to the past in Yonei Pesach. Thank you.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org